All right, it's easy to get gun shy after what I witnessed last night and for the first half in Atlanta today, with Ole Miss getting completely annihilated, taken apart, obliterated by TCU 28-0. It could be worse. It's that bad. I loved the Rebels going into this game, picked them straight up, and of course took the 3.5 points. Last night, I could have had a good run, but didn't. Maryland let me down, plus the 14. I thought that was probably the stupidest pick I've made the entire season, was trusting the Terps with 14 points, but I thought Stanford would be a little bit more conservative on offense and keep it somewhat close. Of course, I took Stanford to win. LSU let me down against Notre Dame. I was coming off a 6-0 run the night before in picking the game straight and against the line. And then I turned in, I think, a 2-4 night straight and against the line on Tuesday night. So we're at New Year's Eve, and I'm off to a rip-roaring start with the Rebels down by 28. Let's get through the January 1st bowl games, and keep in mind that I'm taking Mississippi State tonight, minus the points, which are down to 4 right now against Georgia Tech in the Orange Bowl. Also like Arizona to cover the 3 against the Boise State Broncos in the Fiesta Bowl. Also keep in mind that people tend to be a bit conservative in picking these games, but about a third of them traditionally, if you go through the years, and certainly through the first 18 bowl games, there were 7 upsets. So about a third of the games upset picks. So I'm looking at that going through January 1st and January 2nd, and here's what I've got. We've got the Cotton Bowl with Michigan State and Baylor. After the TCU Ole Miss game, I said that this was the game outside the playoff games that I wanted to see. It still is. I believe in Michigan State. I believe in Connor Cook. I think that they throw the ball just about as well as Baylor does. But I believe in the Michigan State muscle. I believe in the force. I believe in the running game. I believe in the defense. I think this is going to be a very, very close game. I love Sparty plus the 2.5 points. Michigan State wins in Texas. Auburn-Wisconsin. Conventional thought here is that Wisconsin's going to have difficulty against Auburn's offense, the triple option attack, and also the playmakers on the outside with Duke Williams and with Sammy Coates. Duke Williams will not play in this game in the Outback Bowl against the Wisconsin Badgers, coming off that 59-0 pasting at the hands of Ohio State. Duke Williams has been suspended. I think that's key. I like Wisconsin to keep it close. This one, difficult for me to pull the trigger. Forget 59-0. Wisconsin's not that bad. They are a very, very good football team. They are comparable to what they've been the last 5 to 10 years. They are as good, just about as good as anybody in the country across the board, aside from not having the quarterback, not having at least one dynamic playmaker on the outside. They struggle throwing the ball. It's going to hurt them in this game. I think Wisconsin keeps it very close. I love everything else about them. I still think the defense is very good. One of the 10 or 12 best in the country. Melvin Gordon's lights out. Auburn wins over Wisconsin. Take the Badgers plus the 6.5 points in that one. Let's go to the other SEC Big Ten matchup. Missouri taking on Minnesota. Mizzou won ugly the entire year. They won a lot with special teams. The offense didn't generate much. I don't expect the offense, despite the speed, or at least the perceived speed difference between Missouri out of the SEC and Minnesota out of the Big Ten, and especially Minnesota. We're not talking Ohio State, Michigan State, Michigan, even though they haven't played well. They've recruited well and have speed on that team. Minnesota is considered a slow-footed team. I love the running game of Minnesota. I think they keep this awfully close. I've got to pull the trigger with Missouri, but I could definitely see Minnesota pulling off the upset. We'll take the Tigers, but I will take the Gophers plus the 4.5 points against the spread. Let's get to the 2 playoff games. Oregon, Florida State. Oregon doesn't make nearly as many mistakes as Florida State. Florida State, this has been the trend for 13 games now, in almost losing to Georgia Tech, to Boston College, to North Carolina State, to Florida, to Louisville, to Notre Dame. For Oregon, they've been a much more dominant football team against a good schedule. I think these teams are much closer than 9 points. I expect Florida State to play like a champion, to play with a lot of pride. And if there's one formula that I see for Florida State winning this game, just in regards to the advantage that they could take advantage of, it's that Oregon is undersized. Florida State matches them athletically. Don't think that Oregon's faster than Florida State. They play at a faster pace. They play a more style offense that showcases that perimeter speed on the edge. But Florida State, athletically across the board, is as good as anybody in the country. If you're just talking about guys that can jump and run and do athletic things, as athletic as anybody, if Florida State determines in the offensive line with a few road graders that they have up there in Irving in particular, and we highlighted two of them, of course, Cam Irving being the star, but Florida State's got the offensive muscle up front to turn this into a grinded-out football game. Still use the outside speed. Rashad Green, of course, O'Leary at tight end, but muscle Oregon. Okay, that said, Florida State is still prone to make mistakes. That starts with the quarterback, Jameis Winston. He will make some remarkable throws in this game. Mariota's a bigger threat with his legs, and with his decision-making, he makes far fewer mistakes. So I like Oregon to win the game, but I think it's a razor close. I think Mariota possibly pulls it out in the end. Ducks win it. Florida State plus the 9 points. Okay, Ohio State and Alabama at the Sugar Bowl. I think the Buckeyes are about a year away. If you look at the roster, Jalen Marshall, freshman, Ezekiel Elliott, sophomore. The best playmakers on defense, Joey Bosa, Von Bell, Eli Apple, Darren Lee. Those guys, they're freshmen and sophomores. Cardell Jones, that's just too much of a barrier to overcome, I believe. He looked great in the Big Ten championship game, and that's a credit to him to come out in his first start, big stage, against a top-flight defense and rip them to shreds. But he played out in front the entire game, faced no game situational adversity nor adversity in the pass rush and in the defenses that Wisconsin played. He didn't get confused. He didn't have a collapsing pocket. He didn't have to face that type of pressure. At the same time, the pressure of the game didn't get to him because he was out in front from the first series on. It was 7-0, 21-0 on down the line. Okay, they're going to have adversity in this game. How is he going to respond? I think he has the talent to make plays. I think Ohio State has so much speed and athleticism. As long as he plays a decent game, they're going to score points. I think Amari Cooper is a huge issue on defense, and I think Derrick Henry is more difficult once you've got him bodied up to tackle than anybody that the Buckeyes has faced. He's not necessarily better than Tevin Coleman. I think he's better than Jeremy Langford, but I don't think he's better than Melvin Gordon overall. But when you've made contact with him, he is a beast to try to tackle. Saying all that, it's going to be a good game. Bama too much in the second half. Let's call it Alabama 42, Ohio State 27 in that one. So Bama covers the 9. All right, Tennessee, Iowa the next day, January 2nd, another SEC Big Ten matchup. I think this is a bad one for the Big Ten. I think the Big Ten will show that they can play right there with the SEC. They're not as good as the SEC, but they will be competitive in these games, so this will be another one. I like Tennessee. The secondary play and the wide receiver play at Tennessee, now that Josh Dobbs is at quarterback and can highlight the wideout play, you'll see where it's up to the elite SEC standards at this point. Not necessarily in the trenches, but Iowa can't take advantage of that. Hawkeyes show up, they play well. Tennessee wins, covers 3.5. UCLA-Kansas State, one of the games that I really want to see. I think UCLA is a team that often disappoints us. Look at the Stanford game when they had it all in their lap to play Oregon for the Pac-12 championship. I think UCLA comes out and they play well. Kansas State, we've seen them in these type situations in bowl games get a bit overwhelmed by the Oregons of the world. I know UCLA is not Oregon in its style of play, but athletically UCLA too much in this one. They cover 1.5 in the bowl game against Kansas State, the Alamo Bowl. All right, we got a Washington-Oklahoma State game. If you compare the scores against the competition, the Huskies have played very well against strong, solid competition like Stanford and like others that they've had to play in the Pac-12, UCLA in particular. They've lost those games by 6, 7, 10 points. The UCLA game was actually a bit of a downer for Washington, but they've played strong against solid competition. Oklahoma State hasn't played anybody well except the bookends of the season. Florida State, then they pulled off the game against Oklahoma, and who knows how much the Sooners have at this point or how credible that game is. Washington wins. Got to take the 6.5 with Oklahoma State in that one. And finally, going to pick an upset with Houston. They were a preseason American Athletic Conference pick. I think that they've disappointed this season, but I think they have the skill position players in place to give Pitt a run. Take Houston plus the 3 points against Pitt. Those are my picks. Love to hear what you have to say. Let's compare scores and compare picks right here on Mark Rogers TV.